happy to kind of turn the tables on Miss Alex Trenoweth and her new book, Growing. Actually, not new.
It's not
I
new.
apologize. But
It's time
new
to
to
write another
me,
one.
and the awareness of it, I think, is really incredible. Can you tell me kind of what brought you to this work?
I guess it was plain frustration, and I think all of us are educated in some way. Most of us go through the public school systems or the comprehensive school system if you're in England, and just looking at the system and thinking that it was inadequate. And just thinking that we're understaffed. The important work that we're doing, working with teenagers, is not being appreciated. It's really easy as a teacher to get run down by comments that parents make, or you're constantly under pressure from somewhere. And I really wanted to leave the profession because I only got into it to pay for my astrology classes. And I just thought to myself, it's can't pay me enough to to do this, because I thought I'd have long summer holidays and weekends and Christmas and Easter to study astrology, and it just didn't happen. But I was teaching the class. I even remember what I was teaching. I was talking about Macbeth and how he went from hero to zero, and I was yapping away, and at my same time thinking, where am I going to go from here? What else could I do? And I looked at my students. I thought, you guys all have the same Jupiter sign because they're all born in the same year, roughly, and with a few variations. And of course, I have my Jupiter and I have my Saturn, and your Saturn and Jupiter playing off. And so it suddenly came to me how I can make teaching so much more efficient and
engaging.
And more meaningful to me as well. When I'm feeling that I'm teaching and I'm giving something, because that's really important to me, that I'm just not, functioning within a job and getting paid, which is how I was feeling. I was getting more and more run down, and I wasn't really feeling that sole purpose, which I do feel very strongly when I'm teaching, which is why I'm still teaching, albeit in a different, slightly different way. So that moment that I thought that I could revolutionize the education system through astrology was what really got me to push a little bit beyond, after doing all my marketing, all my planning, to find the time on the weekends to write this book. And I love the way that it rolled out, because by the time I wrote this book, I'd been a teacher for a full Jupiter cycle. So I got to see all the different classes through the Jupiter signs and a good few through the Saturn signs. And the case studies, as we talked about this morning, if I had come across a case study that I really had to work to fit my framework, I might not have written this book. But as it happened, every single case study that I chose, it fit beautifully into this framework of the Jupiter and Saturn cycles. So when I had it finished, I was obviously very happy, because isn't it a great feeling to have a book written?
It's a birth.
It is
it really is.
It is a birth. It certainly is. And it changed my life as an astrologer. I went from being someone very obscure to someone who did a lot more traveling and talking to people about what I wanted to do. And I'm going to start a new campaign. It's called Get Alex on Oprah.
So any of you out there who know Oprah and are able to do it, I think I just have to name it because I think it's just such a wonderful play on words too. Because in Hindi, Jupiter is guru, right?
Guru, yeah.
And so here we are speaking of teacher. That's such a beautiful thing. And then to have that, the grand accordion, Jupiter and Saturn, and the constriction and the container and the
breathing,
expansion,
the respiration.
exactly. Because what I like to say is when people talk about expansion and contraction, it's like, okay, well, which do you like better, the inhale or the exhale?
Yeah.
The fact that we get so caught on one side of the polarized side of it. So, I love that you're working with these two aspects that are really important, because it's also understanding what our limits are. And kids need to feel that, be able to push up against, those limits and know it's okay and understand, because they're in the process of individuating and becoming their own selves, their own little gurus. When you talk about Saturn and Jupiter together, it's like, their own authority, their own big authority, the ways that they're going to interact with the world, the way they're going to understand what their limits are, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. Because nowadays, as you know, most parents aren't playing that role.
Well, I think parents feel very caught in the middle between raising their children the way that their parents raised them, which was okay because, look, I'm fine. And
fine with quotes.
and raising your child in the way that the government tells you got to raise your child, and the government puts boundaries on how we discipline our children, for example, and society puts boundaries on us in the way we interact with our children in public. So this whole entire Saturn thing is a big deal. When a politician puts a law into place that prohibits the amount of sugar that we consume. That's Saturn acting too. That's Saturn coming in and telling us how to live our lives, basically.
Right.
So, I have a really big theory about Saturn in that it doesn't always have to be the bad guy, but Saturn, like Mercury, needs respect, like all the other planets need respect. This is why I'm kind of down on people that slag off Mercury retrograde. It's like Mercury is a god.
He needs to rest.
Don't blame him. I think he's really going around to your computers
Right.
and unplugging them and punching them in the
And if
the
you do,
keyboard.
if it does, it's probably because you need it.
You
I
need a
mean, I'm
break.
sorry, it's not
Yeah,
usually.
true.
I mean, there's usually a greater. For those of us who've gotten caught, and all of us astrologers have played that. I mean, you were fortunate enough to be born in Mercury retrograde, so everything goes smoothly for you.
Like
in the
Janis
sense.
Joplin,
Right?
and Michael Jackson.
Yeah, there you go. And
Hillary
it's
Clinton.
an amazing gift because like you all always have this wonderful opportunity of viewing the world really literally through a different lens. And you said something earlier when we were talking about seeing your class as this composite of Saturn, Jupiter. Can you explain that a little bit better? Because I like that, because it's almost like this way of being able to allow people their individuality, allow the student to have their individuality, but have them in this wonderful sort of a container that allows you to be more efficient in the way you're providing your.
Yeah, well, I think it's very important, first and foremost, to understand the role in the classroom. I am the Saturn in the classroom, so I need to be impervious. Now, there's no point in me getting upset about things that happen in the classroom or taking things personally, because these are children who are acting out their Jupiter. They're trying to expand and grow. So that was really like the main lesson I think all teachers have to learn is don't let it be a personal thing. When a child's rude to me, and it does happen, one of the things I do is I turn the tables. I said, that sounded a bit rude. Did you mean it? And more times, they'll turn around and say, well, I didn't mean it. I just got a little bit too excited, or I didn't mean it to come out the way that it did. And that gives us a nice level playing field.
Well, it brings awareness too, because there's so many ways in which I think as adults we tend to just act in certain ways because we're fine.
Yeah.
And then our kids learn that as well. And then it's like, then we have all these people acting fine when no one really is acting fine. And I think that's kind of the stage we're here. I can't speak. I know England's going through its own issues, of course, right now. But here in the State, I mean, we're dealing with that. How does one, the great question is, how does one allow oneself the expansion of being oneself and yet have the respect for people around you? And you're like, how do we get to be our own individual archetype, as we learn about astrology, but allow that archetype to shine in a way that doesn't burn or harm anyone else?
Well, humans throughout history have proven to be very adaptable. And this is part of the goodness of Jupiter, embracing Jupiter too, because he was the ultimate shapeshifter. He could be a shower of gold to one person and, a little bird, a little swan, a little bird in the window. He had the ability to be different things. And I think when we start to understand our Jupiter and how we search for the truth, our version of the truth, we start finding ways that we can be, adjust our behavior. And my job as the Saturn figure is to, let the Jupiter run wild, but also provide that really clear boundary so that Saturn can be developed to my students as well. And so only through astrology and by studying astrology have I understood how important this is. But I'm only one teacher in a huge system. So, that's why I'm kind of joking about being on Oprah, because I would really like to bring this sort of knowledge to teachers just about, because we don't hear enough how important our work is. And I feel that we are, as a profession, we're not hitting the right age groups. We should be focusing on the children that are undergoing all the rapid brain development between the ages of 12 and 13. Well, unfortunately, behavior-wise, they're the most difficult age group to deal with, and they're the ones that teachers don't want to teach. And, they don't get the appreciation from parents or the government or whatever.
Very clearly. And it'd be nice. I mean, I could see this being, you doing CEUs for child therapists, doing, teaching teachers, figuring out some way to include it in some sort of a curriculum for up and coming teachers. I mean, what a great way of understanding and having the compassion for it. Because I think, especially with our generation, those of us born in the mid 60s, a lot of our generation decided that they wanted their kids to be, best friends with their kids. And kids need the parent to be the parent. And then fortunate thing is there's ways in which, I mean, as we speak of Saturn, the ways in which responsibility, the shirking of responsibility in so many levels is happening across all of our societies. And the truth is, if each of us can bring that back into our own, being responsible for yourself, being responsible for your family, getting your kids to understand what responsibilities are, not foisting that on to make teachers and police officers and other people responsible, for correcting people. And it's like, that, but the hard part is if we grow up in that family that doesn't have that dynamic, we don't know any better, and so then, and when it's funny because as you were even thinking of it, I was thinking like, if you were Saturn and I'm Jupiter, I'm going to keep expanding as much as I can, but I've got to reach a point where it's like the ring passed not,
well,
right?
Yeah, which is why I was holding myself firm.
Except I know, and I appreciate that, and that's what, to be honest, as we're growing up, that's one of the hardest things, and you and I both have Saturn and Pisces.
And I'm wearing black as
well.
Right,
exactly, I'm wearing white. Saturn and Pisces, it's a little more polarity. Saturn, we both have Saturn and Pisces, what is our big thing is learning like the healthiness of appropriate boundaries. And boundaries are actually, they're, how do you say, organic, energetic fields that shift based upon like our mood and who we're interacting. I mean, you've been here for a few days, and I mean, there aren't many people I think who are around either one of us on the ways you and I have been engaged without going, okay, now like that's enough. Even with our squaring moons. Maybe after this we'll leave each other alone.
Not a chance. About Saturn and Pisces too. I mean, I think that Saturn and Pisces is really happy to like look at the water, but to get them to go into the water, either they have to be pushed and be rescued, or somebody else has to be drowning and they have to be the rescuer. So I think that's the choice with that particular mutable sign.
Does water have to be just right for you to get into it?
Well, this is
like bodies of water.
Well, this is the.
Like when you like.
I used to be a lifeguard, so it doesn't bother me.
Okay.
I got all the tricks. You put the water in the back of your neck and on your belly, and then you can jump right in.
Yeah. Like that was like those are the things for me. Like my little scorpion and goes, it just contracts so much.
So is Jupiter in Gemini or?
Jupiter is in Taurus.
Jupiter's in Taurus.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
So I'll tell you what a lesson I did for Jupiter and Taurus kids. I was teaching history, and we were doing the French Revolution, and you could just tell that kids just aren't getting it. Like, oh yeah, but the royalty were living a great life, and the poor people, and they just didn't get it. So what I did was I thought, Jupiter and Taurus, I'm going to hit them where it's going to have an effect, their belly, right? So I created like a French restaurant with the plaid tablecloths or checkered tablecloths, and I got some fresh bread from the canteen, and I put it on the table. And then I elected one person to be the king, and I got a nice bar of chocolate. And so everyone else was eating this bread that they were happy with, but that they were eating the chocolate in front of them. And so we all had to go around and talk about how do you feel about him having this nice chocolate and you guys eating bread without even any butter. And of course, some of them came up with, well, I was hungry and it, it suited me for the moment. And others are outraged. They're like, what? I want some butter. I want some jam. I want some peanut butter. I want something on this bread. Why does it? Then they got it. They really got it. So
beautiful.
Addressing what the key nature of the learner is going to be the way to make unforgettable lessons. And then even if you have a few Jupiter and Gemini students, with a few tweaks, you can also include them in on giving their opinion or communicating how they're feeling, which is always a good exercise for Jupiter and Gemini. Make them tell you how they feel, because that's always hard.
And
for
also
them.
get him to play both sides, right? Get him to play the king and then get him to play the peasant. Which is what a lot of us end up doing lifetime after lifetime, because that's one of the major energetic dynamics that gets played out here on the physical plane. Until we realize, money is just an energy. It's not a goal, people. Well, maybe it is for some of you. Sorry, it depends on where you are on your evolutionary stage.
But understanding, I hear what you're saying about money. It certainly is true for a lot of astrologers. We all struggle with that one. But I was going to say, understanding how a child learns can also help you with your paperwork, because when you have to justify why you're doing what you're doing, you can't use astrological terms, but you can use key words that are going to still be true to the astrology, but also make the inspectors very, very happy.
And I would imagine you get a fair amount of kids who come back to you later on after they've been out in the world a little bit or gone on to future grades that must go, I just want to say thank you for being...
It happens every now and again. I mean, always when I got a bottle of gin in my hand or something.
Caught again. You got Venus in the first house. So.
It's nice when I hear from kids on Facebook because, of course, we can't interact with children if they're under 18 on social media. But when they come back and they want to update me on what's happening, or they follow me on Facebook, it's just nice that they see me as somebody who's not just the teacher. That I have another side of my life. My Mercury being my on my IC. So
also that wonderful. I mean, we all want to be seen. Truly. I mean, and what's nice in your chart is you have a thing that really kind of inherently has that in it. And so you're really aware that other people need that as well. And then especially when we're growing up and when you think about some of the people, like Hitler, what would it have been like if he had been recognized, like if they'd let him into the art school, and they'd like said, hey, you know what? Actually, because he wasn't a bad artist. But like with a little bit of guidance and stuff, it would seem because in that place of where we are creative, in that place where we do have our levels of sensitivity, and where we do have those things, like to be seen and held in those places and to know we're okay, builds a level of inner strength that isn't started from a place of poor development. And what happens, we have these incidents that adversely affect our development, and then we get stuck in those energetic places.
Yeah. Very.
Another whole talk.
Absolutely.
So, anything else you'd like to say before we?
Well, it's just that astrology is in this very interesting time. Where we're coming away from, I think, the simplicity of sun signs, and we're looking more at astrology at a deeper, more complex level. And I recently did an interview with a group of astrologers that all had their own astrology schools and all had their own practices. And I asked them what led them to astrology. And not a single one said they read it first in a star sign column. It was their parents who were an astrologer, or they had someone else who introduced them at some point. So I think we're, not that there's anything wrong with sun signs, but I think we're coming into a time of where astrology is going to have a lot more significant meaning. And I think it's up to us old guys, to hold that light and to remember that we're all seekers and searchers of wisdom, and we're all trying to find a better way of living and to make the world a better place. And, so we all need to all of us need to step up to the mark and get on with finding our purpose within astrology.
Well, I want to thank you for writing this book, for also working with the children. I mean, working with children and helping to provide a healthy environment in which they get to grow and be seen means that we all get to live in a world going forward where there's a little greater consciousness, there's a little greater compassion, a little better understanding. And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.